Welcome everybody to Business Time Live with myself, Mags Boland Murphy and Boffin Consultancy. And I hope all is well with everybody in business and in life today. Today, I would like to introduce you to our guest, the fabulous Sineád Kelly, Courtney Kelly, to give her full title, like myself, double-barreled. But that makes us even better again, Sinead. And Sinead has kindly is doing this from the metropolis and the beautiful, beautiful sunny location of Spain. Sinead, how are you doing?
Hi, Mags. Good to see you. How are you?
And you too. Always a pleasure with you. Sinead, so you run a business, a great business that provides an invaluable service at Courtney Kelly Consultancy. So can you tell our listeners, I suppose, a little bit about the business and what you actually do?
Sure, Mags. Thank you. It's a bespoke compliance consultancy business. And basically what that means is that I go in and help small business stick to the rules, whatever format that they may take. I practiced for many years as a solicitor, and then I digressed into business myself and could see obviously that there was a need to focus obviously on things like laws and regulations and codes of conduct for your business. And I felt that there was maybe a niche there for me to explore. So I provide a tailored service that hopefully brings some sort of assistance and solution to those businesses, whether they're heavily regulated or not. I work across a wide sector of different industries. I'm very lucky. I could be working top of the country with a primary care provider this week. Next week, I could be working with somebody in retail or whatever, at the other end of the country. So it's really whatever they need to focus on. And, to look at it in the practical sense, you're looking at things like, for example, just small business health and safety, employment law. Primary healthcare providers are heavily regulated within their own industry. So it's looking at that. And it's also maybe looking at codes of conduct and maybe internal rules and controls within the business or for the business.
And it just goes to show, I suppose, Sinead, and I see it on the ground very much post-pandemic as well, that businesses are actually reviewing if they have protected themselves now more than ever. It's that pain piece that none of us like having to address, and sometimes we don't see the value until we need to see the value in it, because you're protecting one of your most valuable assets, and that's the livelihood piece. Yeah. And the people in that business and their livelihoods as well. And I think that's really important. Do you see, what are you getting asked for a lot of at the moment?
Well, I suppose, in light of the last couple of years that we have experienced, I've worked a lot with businesses, not specifically only on the COVID piece and the COVID compliance, but also now obviously we're in a very volatile sort of environment. So you're dealing a lot in the change management space, and that can affect even things like legal entity of a business, things like organizational structure, staffing, learning and development, health and safety, all those different things. I think really for any business that the priority is, looking at those business plans that were, and maybe, having a bit of latitude, a bit of elasticity to kind of say, right, cannot control 100% what's ahead of me. So I have to factor in some acceptance and acknowledgement of the need to change as and when required.
Yeah, and that's something that we're seeing a lot of actually, Sinead, is change management and the requirement for it. And then there's all the complexities surrounding it as well. Businesses have had to, I suppose, draw on their resilience and be somewhat more flexible. And I think that's not altogether a bad thing. The old saying of always be covered, never be caught really comes into play with regulations and compliance. And the only direction that regulation is going in business and in life is up. It's not going to reduce in any shape or form. And it does affect businesses when the unforeseen happens or you're not protected. And then the panic sets in. So I guess it's reducing that as well. Inside of, how have you felt since the pandemic? How have you found the change yourself?
In fairness, with regard to this particular business, it's been quite beneficial for me, obviously, from the perspective of providing assistance and solutions to business. There's obviously been that niche there with COVID. And again, that whole change management piece, focusing very much on compliance and reframing. I mean, you touched on it earlier, Mags, and I'm under no illusion that compliance is that boring stuff that nobody necessarily wants to think about or indeed knows what it is that they need to focus on. And for me, it's, saying to business, well, look, reframe the way you think about it. It's not just a bureaucratic obstacle, make better business, make your business better so you can get better business. And compliance is one way of doing that, the motivators really, from the perspective of yourself, your reputation, the reputation of your business, right through to, we're very much operating in an era now of what we call noble cause, and, making business decisions and adopting business practices that maybe have an environmental, a social and a good governance perspective. And that's all compliance, that's all in the field. But if you focus on it and do it well, then it can potentially put you in a good spot in terms of protection, sustainability, and, achieving some sort of competitive advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I think for businesses out there who are always looking to make their business stronger, that, protecting it makes it stronger, makes it more durable and more attractive to the right type of people and the right type of clients. And I think, it is really, really important that we remember that. And right now, when businesses are coming to us saying, well, can we do it a different way? What do we need to do? None of us have a magic wand, but we have to look at every resource we have in-house and ask, can we make this stronger? Can we make this better? And I was only talking about that with a colleague of mine, Jenny, earlier on. And I think that's a choice too, Sinead. That's a choice. If you want to be stronger and step up to the plate, then you need to just address what needs to be addressed. And we all have things on the long finger that we don't want to touch, that doesn't light our fire. But we have to look and see, if you're in business, sometimes you've got to deal with the stuff that you don't want to deal with. And that isn't the enjoyable piece. And let's face it, accounts would be number one on that, and compliance and regulation and insurance and all those beautiful subjects, but they all have their place in the wheel. And all the cogs in the wheel need to be strong in order to work efficiently. So I absolutely agree with you. So tell me, you're out in Spain. Please tell me it's a holiday.
It's a working holiday as such, Max.
Great, I love it.
Yeah, we sure look. I suppose that was one of the motivating factors for myself in setting up the consultancy business. I mainly work from a laptop, and with regard to, how I operate, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be, at the one particular location all the time. So I'm fortunate that way. And I suppose just took advantage of this week.
I love that. I really love that, Sinead, because that's the one thing, and I don't know about anyone that's listening to this, but that's the one thing that I think we kind of have to thank the pandemic for, if that makes sense. It has persuaded us into positive progress, but also we've embraced a new way of working. And there's more than one. We've kind of realized that there's more than one way to work.
That's right.
And as I often say, we've been using online systems since 2013, and it made it possible for me to live in another country for 12 months and still do work with my clients in Ireland and in the UK at the time. And I think we have to look at what's there. What can we utilize to make our businesses smarter, to make our lives easier, and to give a better service as well, let's be honest, but also give a better service to ourselves as business owners, that we have a bit more balance in place as well. And that's, I used to say, well before the pandemic and well before tech systems came into play, that don't be defined by your location. But really and truly now, there's no reason why any business owner or a professional should be defined by their location. I did hear tell of a company recently that has just refused to allow remote systems and flexible working. And I do think that's a fundamental flaw in their business, because I know the business very well and I know that it could be done, and it can support things like, talent retention, not so much staff retention, but keeping the talent in-house, and also giving people that flexibility. It's not all about money anymore. It's about that work-life balance piece. For me anyway, for sure, it's about that. Every single day we are business owners, we have to make a living, but maybe to pull what positive stuff we can out of what was a terrible situation with the pandemic, and try and adapt, evolve, move and adapt, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Max. And okay, it doesn't suit every type of business, or indeed every type of production or
No, it doesn't.
operations, and
No.
that's fine, and that's acknowledged. But for those of us that are lucky to be able to consider it, it's definitely well worth considering, both as an incentive personally, and indeed for people who are maybe potentially going to come and look at your business and want to work with you. I just feel that for me, I'm not traveling around the world every day of the week, or indeed every month, but it just gives me that opportunity a couple of times a year. Maybe if I've a right bit of drafting or paperwork to do, I can say, right, well, take myself off to sunnier clients. And it does give you that balance. It does give you that opportunity to obviously avail of the sunny weather and whatever else.
And how bad?
I know. Feel sorry for you, Mags, not. But,
oh, thanks, Sinead. I'm feeling the love now with that.
I think the mindset, and we've got to, it's the whole idea of change management that we were talking about earlier. We have got to feed in, and we've got to realise that, there are different schools of thought out there. Our younger generations definitely have a much more agile approach to where they are. They definitely have, I would say, a much healthier perspective in terms of where you draw the line with work and life. And I think we've got to be mindful of that. So to me, obviously, I'm quite biased in what I say, but I do think remote, flexible stroke working is definitely something that maybe was considered more in the, maternal sphere, but it's actually something that can apply to many types of businesses, and definitely it shouldn't be ruled out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I've heard so many good, positive stories, more than anything else, from the implementation of a hybrid model, maybe in some cases, or remote in other cases. And like, we've a hybrid model here. Sometimes we'll be working remotely, sometimes we're on site face to face. It depends on the circumstances and the requirements. But it also, I think, it reduces a little bit of that stress, that running and racing. And we do need to be aware of that, because at the end of the day, we're all numbers, and we have to decide whether we want balance or not. And you can have balance in business if you choose to do so. There's no two ways about it. You can still work smart and efficiently and get what you need to get done and provide the service that you intend to provide. But also, stay real, I guess. Not to get caught up on the hamster wheel.
True.
And the rat race, going back to the compliance for a minute, just to give some of our listeners an idea, because Sinead, I know what you do, and I know what it makes possible for companies. But if you can talk to us a little bit, just use one of your clients as an example, maybe, about what a difference it made to their business.
Sure. Well, if I give you an example within the pandemic there in terms of the change management, I had a client in the motor industry sector, which obviously, luxury type of product, and, an indicator very often of how business overall is doing. And they were faced with closed doors, like a lot of us. So it was very much focusing on organizational structure. And what started out as a pandemic response actually became an opportunity for them to focus on what was in the business, what they actually needed in the business. So it was a complete restructure, right from the top down. Unfortunately, led to some redundancies. But, redundancy is one of those things, no matter what jurisdiction you're in, there is a certain procedure and, negotiation sort of, and very much an information piece there that you do have to speak to your employees about. And we were able to do that in, a compliant way for the employer and in an empathetic way for the potential employees who found themselves in that potential category of being made redundant. So we were able to do that in a way that was, as I say, both empathetic to the employees, but also beneficial to the business. And I was doing another piece of work for them recently, and thank goodness they haven't looked back, because the opportunity arose for them to focus on, right, what are we doing? Who do we need to do this type of work in terms of, what are the skills that and the duties that are required within the business? And they have moved forward from that. At the minute, I'm working with, I suppose the other side of that, I'm working with clients at the top of the country in Donegal in terms of engagement and retention. Again, dealing with, a lot of malaise, a lot of low morale, both pandemic and business induced. So we're looking at setting up some sort of engagement process, reporting back to senior management, and then looking maybe at a bit of learning and development opportunities and probably a whole HR mentoring process and setting up a particular HR strategy, because they're a business who many years ago set up maybe with 5 to 10 employees, and now they're sitting with 40, 50 employees. So obviously the risks are greater, and the responsibility in terms of employment compliance, are more important now as well. So that's the type of thing in practice. Data protection, a big thing. GDPR, every organisation, whether it's a business or not, we would do that, go in and draft the appropriate policies, procedures, etc., train staff. So it's the type of thing in practice that we're doing, Max, at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's good work. And it kind of tallies in with a lot of stuff that we're seeing, which would be connected with that. And I think, it's the HR piece has become massive, I think, Sinead, out there at the moment in the marketplace, in two respects, for certain companies anyway: attracting the right type of talent and skill, number one, but keeping the talent and skill that you have, number two. And I do feel sometimes that business owners are grappling with, they have their job that they do every day, but then they have to grapple with, if they have big teams in particular, how do we manage this piece? And particularly if they don't have a dedicated HR resource in-house, they might have somebody that they refer to outside, but when a business is growing, you need a more consistent presence. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in-house, but you definitely need to have somebody there that you can pick up the phone to and who can come in and advise you in the right way, in a qualified manner, in an informed way. And I think, one of the things that businesses are grappling with now, they're beginning to realize that you can't throw money at it anymore. It's not all about money for people now. And I was talking to a recruitment specialist recently who told me that they are receiving more requirements now from candidates for flexible working and for maybe 3-day week, 4-day week, and those type of positions they're not there in a plentiful supply. There's a lot of full-time roles in plentiful supply, but I suppose it's about that compromise piece, Sinead. It's about, okay, well, you want X, Y, and Z, but would you work with this? And that's from both parties, from both the candidate's perspective and the employer's perspective as well. That there's always more than one way to get around something and, to succeed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, Max. And it's also about being realistic about it. And I suppose this is where, we go in and work with the business. I go in to learn about the particular business as well, and find out what it is they do, and, their obviously what their business plans and objectives are before I would make any sort of suggestions. It's important to find out what goes on in a business, what the plans for the business are, so that you can come up with an appropriate strategy.
Yeah. And I suppose to remember as well that one size doesn't fit all. I don't think I've ever come across two businesses with the very same challenges that need the very same solution.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. At the minute, as I say to you, at the minute, I've just come from working with one business that made employees redundant, and now I'm working with another business that needs to attract employees. So it really, it depends what your business needs, what your business does, and what it needs to, what your operations are, and how do you underpin that with appropriate policies and procedures and strategies, whether it's attracting, retaining, whether it's, something to do with your operations from a health and safety perspective or a regulatory perspective. It's really just trying to find what's important. And within that, there is like a scale and a level of priority. It's important for me that I don't go into a business, tracking up to say, right, you need to do A, B, C, D. It's identifying the most important thing at that point in time, which will then obviously give the business a better return of investment, whether that's employment, whether that's data protection, be what it may.
Yeah. And I think as well, I think that's really important because, you get to know the business and it's not like you're throwing something at them, because that doesn't work, I think business owners, any of the business owners I know that are in operation, are just so glad to have come through the pandemic and be still open. I know that we helped two businesses to close, and that was tough. That was very tough. But in saying that, their priority, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about because they don't have to think about it, is the pressure, the stress that business owners were under during that pandemic. They were worried, genuinely worried about their people. And for the decent humans that are out there running businesses all over this small country of ours and also overseas, they wanted to sustain livelihoods. They wanted to make sure or ensure as much as they could that they could protect their people and give them their employment and return strong. And the stress, the pure stress and worry that we saw from some business owners was just incredible. And some of them, the resilience that we saw in them as well, and that we see in them all the time, every day.
Sure.
We work with amazing clients, and Sinead, I'm sure you see this as well, like that they're really dedicated and committed to driving on and, finding a way around things and working through things. And I think more so now than ever, because 2 years of that really pinned us to put a pin to our collar. Like we really had to step up or step out. And I, for one, see that anyway, that it's not just somebody running a business and everything is rosy in the garden. And I can say that as a business owner myself, and you're probably the same.
Sure.
That you have that other piece there. You're responsible for people's livelihoods.
And I think that's the key.
It is the key.
Yeah. It's about the people, and whether those people are your employees, whether those people are your clients, whether those people are your prospective clients. That is where a lot of your focus lies when you are making and creating your plans and your objectives. Because we're nothing in our business without the people that work for us, and indeed without the people that we're working for. So, there's a massive piece there about how you treat people. And I think for me, what one of the highlights one of the pieces that has been highlighted to me over the last number of years is the importance of getting communication right at every single level, because of the uncertainty, because of the worry, because of the stress, and all that is continuing, as you rightly say, as businesses, whether they're closing, whether they have the threat of closure, or trying to just quite simply get back on your feet. So, it's how you deal with that, but more importantly, how you communicate that to your stakeholders, both internally and externally.
I can't agree with you more on that, Sinead. I really can't, because we are doing some projects at the moment around that piece, communication. And, there's none of us perfect. Perfection, when you strive for perfection, you can meet excellence, right?
We
You'll
read
never.
a long time ago.
Yeah. I think we all have. Sinead. But it's true though. And
Yeah,
to have standards as well, not
yeah,
just for your staff, but for yourself, and to look
yeah,
inwards and say, okay, well, what do I need to change? Am I speaking in the correct way or communicating in the correct way to my team? And not just the people that work with me or for me, but the people, my suppliers of service, my
yeah,
customers and clients. It's all about communicating.
yeah,
And we were with a company yesterday and this came up, and it's a big project we're doing with them. And, we're doing a lot now. We have a phase 2 on the project, and it's all around communication reset and strategy reset, because I think we need to take the time. We got so used to firefighting during the lockdown. And I'm included in that. We didn't take time to breathe, to be honest. We were all firefighting operationally. But we need to give ourselves and give our businesses and give our people that time to actually sit down and go, right, what's the map now going forward? And what
yeah,
does it look like? And
yeah.
how
And
are
how
we
to almost
going
feel
to?
about it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
to invite input and contribution from your team, because as you rightly said, and I say this all the time, you are nothing in business without the people around you and in it.
yeah. I did
Absolutely.
for me, and it was don't know about them, but for me, a very enjoyable session there just before the summer with a fabulous primary care provider in Belfast, and it was all around the diversity and inclusion piece. And a lot of the day was spent on communication and, what you think, oh, your thoughts mightn't be necessarily be my thoughts, but I'm going to listen a little bit more as to what your thoughts are. And we did, a few different activities and tasks, a bit lighthearted stuff, where we were, finding out a bit more about each other and ourselves as it happened. It's terribly deep, but certainly it was one of those things. Whilst it wasn't a day's work, it was very beneficial to the sustainability of that business and how they treat each other going forward, because it was an eclectic mix, of people and attitudes and beliefs and behaviours. So it's important to kind of just acknowledge that there are distinctions and differences, and that you must communicate in a way that respects all of that.
And I think as well to kind of acknowledge that it's okay that we're not all the same.
Yeah. Oh,
That,
absolutely.
we're all,
Absolutely.
as my dad used to say to me, Mags, licorice all sorts. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we
Mm-hmm.
are. And
Mm-hmm.
and like if we were all the same, it'd be a bloody boring world anyway, I can tell you that much. But
But it's better for your
we
business
need,
that you have those perspectives that are very varied, because that brings out different conversations, different ways of looking at things, different offerings. It's really good for business.
and you know what it helps do as well, Sinead, I don't know how you feel about this, but something I feel really strongly about is it helps identify untapped potential
Totally.
in
Totally.
your team, in the person, and sometimes in the business.
Yeah.
You
Especially in
know,
the diversity space, there definitely is a massive opportunity for employers. And that's where all this again, when not necessarily change management, but looking at different ways of doing things going forward. Because if we can address the differences that there are amongst our workforce, or the potential differences that there are within our candidates that are looking at our company, it leads to a wealth of opportunity. But it has to be addressed, it has to be focused on and figured out, and maybe figured out and reviewed as time goes on, but it can reap great reward for business, there's no doubt about it.
no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And aside from business, Miss Sinead, what do you do to switch off? What gives you a little bit of space?
Oh gosh, well, I suppose sunning myself in glorious the bad start.
Well, I won't argue with that. I won't argue with that.
Like, I have 3 girls to keep me busy, Mags, but they're at a great stage in life now. Thank God they're at the cusp of, I suppose, finding their own way. They're all nearly adult now, which is fantastic for them, and it's great to see them, at that stage.
Thrive.
Kind of frees me up really to focus a bit more on growing this business and moving forward with it. But I suppose, like everybody else, trying to focus on that bit of exercise piece. So I do a bit of cycling and stuff like that. And
Get out in the
Again,
fresh
with
air.
the remote working, God knows where the bank could end up. The rest of the country at this stage.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad
No,
thing.
it's great. It's
That's
great.
not
You
a
know, you
bad
kind
thing
of
at all.
you work, you look out, you see there's a bit of sunshine, and then you head off for a spin somewhere. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
all fun.
I find actually as well, especially since lockdown, that I just love being out in the fresh air.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Um, I just think it clears the head, and I think anyone listening should take 5 minutes out. There's none
Yeah.
of us that busy that we can't make a little bit of time for ourselves in the day. Doesn't have to be
I think,
extensive.
yeah, I suppose you and I personally, Mike's coming from, I suppose, the Atlantic front, so to speak. You know, you couldn't but not be attracted to the coast and being out
Yeah.
and about. So yeah,
Well,
it's
I'm
just
a
a step
West
I've
woman
got
now,
to.
gone east, so I have to be very
I
careful.
know you've gone to the dark side, Mags, but we're still on speaking terms.
I love that. I've gone to the dark side. And my husband tells me that I'm very lucky to be in God's own county in Wexford.
Oh
So,
no, depending on where that is,
well, I'll
Mags.
tell you on All Ireland Day now, it wasn't so, he wasn't so vocal, I can tell you.
Oh, bragging rights that day, all right.
I had two big, massive Limerick flags hanging out the front of the house.
Oh,
Sinead, it's been an absolute pleasure. You have your website. Would you like to share it with everybody if they need your qualified and experienced service?
oh, thanks, Mags. Yes, currently have a website, which I suppose is just a window, a shop window at the moment, but it's www.courtneykellyconsulting.com. But I hang out a lot on Hangout. Professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. And then I suppose a bit more of the personality comes out on Twitter. So if people want to look me up there, it would be great to have a chat with anyone to see how we could assist or
Brilliant,
maybe not.
brilliant. Good stuff. And Sinead, I'm delighted to see you're going strong. And keep it going. And thank you for your time from sunny Spain. I am jealous, I won't lie, but hopefully I'll be getting a bit of sunshine in the next 2 weeks myself. I cannot wait to take a breath. Sinead, thank you so much. And to everybody that's listening in, hope everything is going well in your business and in your life, because it's not just about the business, that's part of your life, but there's another side to your life too. Mags Boland Murphy signing off from Boffin Consultancy, and thank you for listening to Business Time Live today.
Thank you, Max.